And now, Dr. Krieger's lecture program starts right now.
Now, everybody heard about the, on the news about the cholesterol, how they're lowering it now? Okay. Now, I wanted to talk about that because, you know, LDLs are considered your bad cholesterol because the higher you have, the less you're carrying from your tissue to your liver to break down and get out of your body. So they think that they're accumulating and piling up, whether it's in your arteries, your liver, your joints, whatever it may be. They're going after these LDLs. I wanted to point out a couple problems or concerns that might happen to make the public aware that I don't think it's in the best interest of the public. Right now, under these guidelines, and I got the guidelines here from the Journal of American Heart Association, and they want to put this number, they want to put this around 70. They want everybody to be around 70. Okay? It used to be 100, 110, 100. Now, 3% of women normally, out of our population, have 70. Okay? 3%. 2% of men have 70 as an LDL. So this is a big, big market out there, and they're basing this off of about 5 studies. To be specific, they're basing this off of, I think it's 5 studies over 60,000 patients or something like that. So I wanted to talk about this because, yeah, keeping your LDLs balanced are good, but my brain lecture that I'm talking about tonight, if your cholesterol level is too low, you can't make serotonin. So everybody that's going to have their cholesterol sunk and have a low LDL is going to have trouble in their body making cholesterol to serotonin. And that's your feel-good hormone. That's a hormone that helps your body adapt to stressful situations, helps put a smile on your face, you know, your neighborly wave, stuff like that. So this is going to be a potential problem in the future. Plus, I pointed out that the biggest thing I think right now with LDLs being high is excess fructose consumption. Okay? They did a study. This came out of Health Scout News, October 23rd of last year, and they found just as much people that have a lactose intolerance, just as much people have a fructose intolerance. And the quickest way to raise your LDLs and lower your HDLs is through fruit sugar. Okay? That's very, very important because that's 50% of everybody that came in there. They had them blow in this meter. The higher the hydrogen level, the higher the fructose, the higher that gas, your body wasn't metabolizing it out. So the higher the gas level of fructose, the more your susceptibility to cholesterol problems. Now they'll say, well, cholesterol's been around or fructose has been around. Well, high fructose corn syrups just in just about everything. It's in baby food. The highest levels are in baby food. Okay? Yeah, you're going to get some in vegetables, but I'm talking about like lactose. If I go out and I have a chocolate malt, I can probably handle about 4 to 6 ounces of chocolate malt. I like to go to Guernsey's, and I eat about, I can have a chocolate malt without irritating my stomach. If it's anything more, like, you know how they give you the cup and then they give you the extra cup? Well, the extra really is extra for me. Because once I drink that down, I can feel my gas, my gurgling, I feel tightness, I feel bloated. That's my level of enzymatic activity where my body cannot handle that much. It's not that I don't have the enzyme at all, it's just that I have a little bit of it. It's the same thing with fructose and fruit sugars. Okay? So right now, They're not going to touch, they're not going to talk about fruits. Oh, fruits are good for you. Yeah, they are good for you. There's some fruits. But sodas, cookies, candies, cakes, pastries, those are all high fructose. That's how you induce diabetes in an animal. Give them fructose. Okay, it's very tough. Even though it's low on the glycemic index, your body doesn't handle it very well. It's released slow, but genetically there's more problems with this because of the enzymatic level of it in your body. So be aware that when they start lowering that, they're going to lower your serotonin levels. Now, what else is cholesterol good for? Immune system. If you think you have a bad gallbladder now, wait until you go on a statin drug or a Mevacor or a Zocor or a Lipitor or any of those statin drugs. Gallbladder stones go up significantly from that medication. It's already #1 surgery in America, besides hysterectomies. But you start going on that drug, and then in Michigan, we have seasons. We don't live in California. We don't live in Florida. Yeah, they have their seasons, but they're milder changes, unless you're talking about a hurricane or other things like that. But I'm talking about generally, we have seasons. So if you're going to be lowering your cholesterol, what's going to start happening? God, my fingertips are cracking. The bottoms of my feet are cracking. I'm not absorbing any of my fat-soluble vitamins. A, E, F, K, all those fat-soluble vitamins that run your immune system, lowering your LDL that level, I believe will compromise your immune system because you're not going to absorb any of the fat-soluble vitamins. All right, let's move on here. I don't need this. All right. I named this the Brain Show because, there's so much different information out there. It's just great studying and researching this because there's a whole bunch of new information that, kind of steps out what you can do for yourself, your family, your friends, for the patients. I mean, this is a great avenue. This is why I got into it. I always was intrigued with the brain. They say the brain is involved as far as disease processes in your body, about 90%. So the mind and the body are very, very closely interknit. The old school of chiropractic always knew that, if you adjusted in one area, it affected another central area up in the brain. Well, they're finding that through adjustment in the different tissues, there's receptors that when you adjust, certain endorphins are released. But that's part of your immune system. They know that's tracked back to your brain. So a chiropractic and a brain relationship, an immune system relationship, when somebody says, well, I went into the chiropractor and he adjusted my atlas and my ear infections went away, well, that's probably one of the reasons why. Or he adjusted my T2 and my hearing came back. So anywhere in the body can affect your immune system. It's kind of like a sore thumb. Even though your thumb's sore, it's just right there. The rest of your body, you're going to be irritable. You're going to be cranky. You're going to try to cover that. You're going to be a little bit more sensitive than normal. But I learned in my neurology class that you couldn't grow new brain tissue. You can't grow new nerves once they're cut. That's what I learned. But now, things are changing. They're finding now, and I'll show you one thing that you could do specifically that can actually has been shown to recreate brain or gray matter in your brain. It says, can you change your brain, grow new brain cells, conquer anxiety, depression, obsessiveness, anger, and impulsiveness? Can and how do food and supplements assist in maximizing brain power, boosting your memory, improve IQ and creativity, and prevent and reverse mental aging? It's never too late to improve physiology of the brain. Myth, the size and potential of the brain is genetically determined with no way to alter. Okay? Fact, your brain is growing and changing. The capabilities depend on how you nourish and treat it. Size may predetermine, but potential is unlimited. Now, diet and neurotransmitters, there's certain foods that contain precursors or starting materials for certain neurotransmitters in the brain. If a diet is deficient in certain precursors, the brain will not be able to produce some of the neurotransmitters. Some of the neurotransmitters that I'm talking about are serotonin, which is mostly your Prozacs, your dopamine in the brain, which has a lot to do with the learning centers, the decision centers in your brain. It has to do with the frontal cortex. GABA-val, which is GABA-aminobutyric acid. That's an inhibitory neurotransmitter, and that helps cool the brain off or relax the brain. There's acetylcholine that actually speeds up the brain. That has to do with the rate at which you process information. And then there's basically endorphins, there's peptides, there's a bunch of different things in the brain, but I'm just going to focus on a couple of them. So those are basically your neurotransmitters that you're trying to allow to be released at the right time, at the right place, with the right things involved. Okay? Neurological and mental disorders may occur with a balance of neurotransmitters is upset or being upset. Now, examples of starting materials. Here's choline, used to make acetylcholine. That's found in eggs, liver, and soybeans. It has a lot to do with memory. What can I say about choline? I have, it's kind of interesting because most of the addictions that we have in society are related to that specific neurotransmitter that you're trying to increase or change, that your brain naturally will not do for various reasons. Okay? One of the ones that I found interesting with acetylcholine or choline, which you need, is most people have, when they have acetylcholine problems or they're trying to push their acetylcholine level, nicotine. Nicotine mimics acetylcholine in the brain. So if you're smoking, if you're chewing tobacco, various things like that, that will push your acetylcholine. It's not the best way to push it, obviously, but when the demand and you know, your job calls for it and it exceeds your amount or your limitation, you know, you'll resort to things that push you even more, but there's problems to that. So the best ways to receive your choline are found in your eggs, basically liver and soybeans. Nobody eats liver anymore. So, but eggs are probably your best source of choline, and then soybeans have done a good job with that too. Glutamic acid, used to make glutamate, found in, and that flow should be flour and potatoes. So that has a lot to do with your energy, your quick energy release. Phenylalanine, used to make dopamine, found in beets, soybeans, almonds, eggs, meat, and grains. That's for processing. That's basically the dopamine's mainly the neurotransmitter that all these kids are having a problem with. Their frontal cortex is not processing correctly. So what the medical doctor will do is put them on amphetamines or Ritalin or a form of cocaine, and that will actually raise their dopamine levels and another neurotransmitter to get them to focus and concentrate. And that kind of leads me to this story that I pulled out, pills versus talking. And this was about, which is kind of scary these days because, you know, we're losing a lot of our personal authority over our family and our children when it comes to decision making. This happened to a father who he took his son to the medical doctor and he was put on Ritalin. His name was Chad, and he was doing great in school. He was doing great in school. He was attentive. He was listening. I guess he was sitting in his seat like his teacher wanted him to sit, But there's obviously more involved in the story, but he had hyperactivity disorder, and his father came across, God, that's not really my son. He's losing sleep, he's becoming irritable, he's becoming cranky. So the father said, hey, listen, I don't want my son taking this anymore, okay? And he said, you know, I noticed some changes that I don't like, that obviously the teachers don't see or the medical doctors doesn't see, but I want my kid off this medication. He took him off this medication, and they found out because his school work declined a little bit, or you know, and was becoming a little bit disruptive, that they turned him in, and they charged him with various things. But under the law, it says right in here that they turned him over to, I think it was the New Mexico's Department of Children, Youth and Families. So people can be charged with child abuse, child neglect, or various crimes involving a child just by not allowing them to take their medication. Okay? So this is getting kind of scary these days to even go to the doctor. I don't even want to go to the doctor. So, you know, you see stories like that and we think, oh, you know, he was probably being neglectful. He was probably being a real good parent, too. He's probably being a good parent, and there were some obvious signs that anybody would see, but he was getting his schoolwork done. Tryptophan, used to make serotonin. It's found in eggs, meat, skim milk, bananas, yogurt, and cheese. It regulates your moods and helps you with adaptability. Tyrosines, used to make norepinephrine. That's another one that amphetamines pushes norepinephrine for focus and concentration and learning processes. It's found in milk, meat, fish, and legumes. You know, it's kind of hard. You're trying to control kids' cholesterol levels. You're telling them they have a high carbohydrate diet, but most of these are found in milks and meats and fish and eggs. You get some in grains, but you can't. You know, you can live off them, but I mean, it's not going to be a good balance. So it's kind of back and forth on the diet concerning what the doctor wants you to do and what the medication is. Here's a quote from Richard Wortman from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He said, until recently, the idea that food might profoundly and rapidly influence brain chemistry is considered scientifically ludicrous. Scientists thought the brain of all organs was particularly protected from the random permutations of nutrition or nutrient invasions, meaning your body didn't process it that way. There's no influence. It went through a totally different separate circumstances in the brain. It turns out that the brain is uniquely responsive to food chemicals. The ability of a meal's consumption to affect the production of brain chemicals distinguishes the brain from all other organs. The crucial compounds that regulate other organs are largely independent of whatever was in the last meal we ate, but not the brain. Now, I took a couple things that I thought were probably the biggest assaults that caused most of our brain dysfunction these days that, you know, most of us, I don't want to speak for everybody, but that I see as far as patients coming in don't even realize there's possibly a metal toxicity problem or your body's not processing certain minerals that are precursors to certain neurotransmitters. B vitamin deficiencies are huge. You know, if you go back to that statement that Dr. Wortman made, B vitamins are water soluble. They need to be in the system constantly, every day. They need to be washed. They need to be pushed through the brain and being held and bathed in the brain. It's that simple. Mineral imbalances, and then essential fatty acid deficiencies. Now, I took this off my my Toxic World lecture, and I thought it was pretty interesting because I don't think anybody or any child these days, or any mother or any father is really, if they're not looking out for stuff like this, they wouldn't realize, God, that might be why this could be a problem with my child. Or I remember, you know, we used to live on the boat, you know, and for a month and just live off of fish and Campbell's soup or whatever. But trying to make a scenario here that there is a lot of pollution in nature. Okay, nature wasn't originally started as a pollution, but man has polluted it for various economic, political, whatever reasons it may be. But these are true situations where PCBs 2 to 3 times a month for 6 years prior, this person ate fish, basically. Okay, they found the difference between infants born to fish-eating mothers and non-fish-eating was clearly evident at birth. The babies of fish-eating mothers had smaller heads and weighed less at birth. They tended to be more jerky or twitchy, had poorer balance, weaker reflexes, and handled minor stresses poorly. What does that sound like? Temper tantrums, can't sit in the seats, jerky, twitchy eyes, jerk when they sleep, jumpy, all those things. Your body's basically, people don't realize it is not just that you breathe with your lungs. Everything breathes. Your brain breathes in the cerebrospinal fluid that bathes it. Your lungs, your skin breathes. Everything breathes. It's not too easy to figure out that, you know, if you put a piece of garlic in your shoe, you're gonna taste it within 5 to 10 minutes. It's going to be absorbed through the system very quickly. So the infants with higher PCBs were found to have more learning difficulties as they grew. When these children were retested at 4 years of age, those exposed to the highest PCB levels had the lowest verbal and memory test scores. Now, aluminum is a major issue, I think, in America, because you'll see why and how the toxicity level becomes so high in the brain. Here's an epidemiologist that from reducing the risk of Alzheimer's, medical science has known for more than a decade that even mildly elevated levels of aluminum can influence memory disturbances in adults as well as hyperactivity and learning disorders in children. Professor Bogman, Department of Pharmacology and Toxicology at Queen's University, advises that when aluminum is deposited in the gray matter of the brain, it will inhibit nerve transport, increase the breakdown of various neurotransmitters, and stimulate the production of harmful proteins. Aluminum poisoning since 1906 to 1912, Harvard Wiley directed one-time government agency that became the United States Food and Drug Administration. He wrote that the food regulation, the earliest days, the use of aluminum sulfate in foods has been condemned. It is universally acknowledged as a poison and deleterious substance in all countries. Today, 64 years after Wiley published those words, aluminum is still used in water purification and for other sensitive consumer applications. Now, here's most of the sources for toxicity that some of us are aware of, but other of us might have not have known. I want to mention in men. Men, hemochromatosis, which is a buildup of iron where you can't break down iron efficiently, you don't have the enzyme to break that down, is more common in men now. I think it's about 1 in 10 men, or 1 in 15 men, have hemochromatosis, which is you can't get rid of iron, so it builds up and it becomes makes your blood viscous, destroys your organs, goes after the liver, goes after the heart. It settles in various organs, and you have extreme stiffness. You'll have high cholesterol. You'll have high triglyceride levels. There's a bunch of variabilities, but it's a huge, huge problem. Well, the reason I'm mentioning this right now is because when I do a hair analysis on people, their aluminum levels will be very high in those men that have hemochromatosis also. So there's a strong relationship between high aluminum levels and high iron levels in the body. And that's important because later you'll see that iron is very, very important and has been known to cause hyperactivity, memory disturbances, various problems due to it not being able to metabolize, but it's also a precursor for dopamine. So if you can't process your iron correctly, or it's building up, and you can't convert it to dopamine, that'll affect your memory, your intelligence, and problems along the way if you don't get this out of your system. So aluminum is a good marker that I see for a hair analysis to look further and see, and then there's other ways of testing for it from there on. But amalgam fillings are a big one, drinking water, air pollution, tobacco smoke. Tobacco smoke, you know, is a lot of chemicals, but mostly cadmium, acetone, arsenic. Those are the main common ones in tobacco smoke. Fish and seafoods, your mercury, your pesticides. Arsenic is a big one for pesticides. Your medications. Most of those antipsychotic medications, they use aluminum because aluminum is not a good conductor of electricity. So when you put something between two synapses where two nerves are supposed to connect and then release certain types of chemicals so you get a behavioral response, you got aluminum sitting there or your body hasn't cleared it away, that synaptic transmission is not going to take place in there. You're not going to get the mood, the behavior, or what you're supposed to get. Okay? Because if you put something between something that doesn't conduct electricity, it ain't going to happen. And your body and your brain's very electrical. Pesticides, I got twice because, you know, it needs to be said twice. Cosmetics, medications, fertilizers are big, and then obviously heavy traffic, old paint, antiperspirants. Here's most of the signs and symptoms of heavy metal toxicity. Obviously decreased IQ in children for lead and mercury mostly. Nervous system disorders, obviously anything from the brain to the spinal cord, twitching, muscle changes, pupil dilation, tremors. Depression's one which I just talked about with synaptic not being able to release certain neurotransmitters because of metals involved. Fatigue, muscle weakness, anemia, skin rashes, high blood pressure, memory loss. Now that high blood pressure could be cadmium too. Cadmium likes to find the kidneys and affect the renal arteries and the circulation. So there's a lot of people that have done IV chelation that is actually, which is a form of chelation where you pull certain metals out of the body that have changed their blood pressure, their memory, and all that. This is where most of this research comes from. Diarrhea, nausea, the metallic taste in the mouth, cancer, hyperactivity, autism, behavior. Now, I talked about this product at my last lecture, and I think it's very important to mention it again because right now, today in society, this type of IV chelation was mostly for people that had a lot of money to be pulled out. That worked very successfully. That would cost anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000 to have 30 IV chelations. Okay, there's a doctor. I have all the information at the office, but these are based on suppositories, and one suppositor, actually 3 suppositories are equal to 1 IV chelation. And it's something you do in the privacy of your own home. It's just as effective as an IV chelation, and you do it before you go to bed, and as 80 minutes after you're asleep, this whole process has already taken place where you did your 3rd chelation. Okay? So it's very important. It's probably the best way, and it's probably the most documented way to actually pull a lot of these metals out of your brain or your kidneys or whatever. Most of these metals displace calcium in the body. Okay? So that's very important. Most of your aluminums, cadmiums, arsenic, mercuries, leads, those are all displacing calcium. Calcium is so crucial in the body. So this is how that works, is through a calcium chelating agent. So it's important. But if you want more information, contact the office, and we'll have that for you, and we'll have all that research for you. It's a pretty popular thing to do. Now, this is probably when somebody comes in the office, I can always see this type of problem. Their B's and their G's. Now, to the left, you have thiamine, which is cataplex B. To the right, you have cataplex G, which is riboflavin. There are two different B supplements, but they need to be together. But in certain people, your body processes them a little bit differently. Sometimes you need 3 times more thiamine than you need riboflavin. Or you need 3 times more cataplex G than you do cataplex B. That's what they found in the research. And so we use these two products separately because it's for specificity, but a lot of times you can use both of these but take 3 of these and 1 of these. So it just depends on your testing. But I wanted to go over some of the key points about this because I found some research on a medical doctor. His name was Derek Lonsdale, and he actually studied thiamine, and he found that there was a relationship while he was studying thiamine to SIDS, which is sudden infant death syndrome. Okay, and they found that these kids, would just go to sleep and they just wouldn't wake up. Okay, and suddenly they would pass away. Well, it's a scare when you have a kid and he stops breathing for 30, 40 seconds, and then his breathing comes back on. You're like, whoa, what was that? Hang on a second. So that's what sleep apnea is. Okay? Well, this Dr. Lonsdale found that if you gave them high levels of thiamine, that would go away. Their sleep apnea would go away. Which means that there was some disruption in their energy metabolism at probably the cerebral level, the medulla, where that part of the brain with the respiration, turning it on and off. So he found that. He also found that there was an increase in auditory, tactile, or visual perception. So, God, the noisiness or feelings in your hands, it was always like an exaggerated feeling that you would have. And this part of the brain called the deep limbic system is where the B's work the best and actually calm them down. It's the most primitive part of your brain. Okay? So it's kind of the basis between, an animal and a man. An animal, you're right about at the deep limbic system, right here at this level. But in a man, you have the temporal lobes, you have the frontal cord, you have a higher center that goes out to. And in some people, it doesn't reach that high, as we can see in nature how things go. But most animals, this is probably the most primitive part of your brain. But thiamine relaxes the most primitive part of your brain. Now, there's certain people that come in that have panic attacks, that have mitral valve prolapse. God, my mitral valve prolapse is acting up on me. Or I have irritable bowel. Or I have TMJ, temporal mandibular joint dysfunction. There was various symptoms that this Dr. Lonsdale found, and he also found that most of these kids or even adults that had this deficiency were very emotional, or they had easy temper tantrums. Okay? So this is how most of the information came about through his research and the research through Dr. Royal Lee and food supplements. And those are mostly thiamine on that side, where you have apprehension, auditory, tactile, or visual perception. I noticed this is kind of an interesting story. I went to the dentist, and it was an emergency show up. I don't know what happened. I woke up, something popped out, oh man, that's sensitive. And I went to the dentist, and I like all the shots and I like the gas. When I go to the dentist, I like to be gassed and I like the shots. I like to be put out and then wake me up and I'm ready to go. But it was kind of interesting because I noticed something that probably not too many people would notice, but when I got the gas, my body was totally relaxed. I was like, wow, this is great. Because you don't realize how you walk around so tense and tight. Well, I got the gas and I was laying there, and they had this commercial in the background with this, I don't know what they were trying to do with this, but it was a commercial trying to sell something, a car commercial. But this guy's voice was so irritating. So the time before he gave me the gas, I heard it. To the time he gave me the gas, my whole body was relaxed, but the muscles in my ears were tense as ever. So this guy was irritating my brain at a subconscious level. And I didn't even realize it. I'm like, wow, this is neat. And I was kind of squinting because I wanted to keep that shut, but it was weird. I don't know if it was the frequency from the radio or just this guy's voice, but the muscles in your ears, there is a thing called noise pollution. What you listen to has a big, important impact on how your neurotransmitters in your brain, whether you're going to be agitated, whether you're going to be happy, whether you're going to be angry. I mean, I knew that when I played hockey. Good golly, you played the worst rock music you can find before you went on the ice. It was that simple. AC/DC, I mean, it was just, I'm thinking back, I'm like, God, what, you know. But it's amazing how music affects you, but I thought that was kind of interesting because the only muscles that didn't let go were the muscles in my ears, and you have muscles that hold the incus, the malleus, and the stapes. It was kind of interesting how that tympanic membrane. So it might not be something you're eating, it might not be something, but it might be something you're listening to, or something that you don't even realize. Something irritates me. You might not even think it's that guy on the radio, or, you know, it's this person next to me. So I thought that was interesting. Excessively worried, moody, apprehension, suspicious, depressed, jumpy, shaky legs, whole body jumps while you sleep. Now, what does this mostly happen to? This mostly happens to kids. Okay? Kids, because whether they're on Ritalin, amphetamines, because when you speed up, you lose most of these water-soluble vitamins. So you're going to the side effects and the consequences are going to be these if it's not balanced. If you push, if you push serotonin too much, you drop dopamine levels, which is kind of interesting. If you push serotonin, you're happy. You're going to lose your motivation to think. Your dopamines are going to drop. So this is what when you go in to your psychologist or psychiatrist, or a psychiatrist is prescribing, but that's what he's trying to balance, because man, you get too much of that serotonin, you're going to be happy. You're not going to do anything. You're just going to want to talk all day. You're not going to do your job. But if you don't have enough, or if you have too little of it in your dopamine, you know, you're going to forget about your wife, your kids. You're going to be working too much. I mean, but this is what they're going to be balanced in. But if you don't get that balance right, you're not going to have the adaptability, and you're going to respond in different ways. But most of it are side effects. It's that simple. So that's what they're trying to balance out, considering other neurotransmitters in the brain. Now, I had this at my last lecture. Zinc diet reduces violence in youth. Okay? They look at zinc right now as its own little neurotransmitter, because what is zinc? Zinc's a good electrical charger for the brain. We use it in batteries. Zinc is lost, is used for the immune system. It's lost through candies, cookies, carbohydrates, anything that has a malnourished high caloric intake. It's basically that simple. But I found it was interesting that that zinc may change antisocial behavior. They took 135 males between the ages of 3 and 20, and they found when they compared zinc with nonviolent people, scientists believe such minerals influence behavior because the body uses them to make chemical transmitters in the brain. That's the way it was designed. The article goes on to refer to Dr. William Walsh, and he says that preliminary experiments have shown that altering the diet of violent males can improve their behavior. It usually takes 2 to 3 months to overcome the copper-zinc imbalance. Copper and zinc tend to be concentrated in the hippocampus of the brain, and the hippocampus is known to be associated with stress control. Zinc deficiencies in juvenile offenders were also found in an unpublished study in Britain by Dr. Ward, a senior lecturer at analytical chemistry, and we think it is a direct result of exposure to heavy metal toxins such as cadmium and lead, which prevent the absorption of zinc. Now, there's one other thing that prevents the absorption of zinc that happens every morning before our kids go to school. And that's what? Milk and cereal. Milk is a huge, huge inhibitor of zinc. Not to say you can't have a glass of milk, but I don't know why anybody would want a glass of milk in the morning, because what is milk? Milk is lactic acid, lactate. It's converted in the body. It actually makes you tired. Milk has serotonin levels. It'll make you feel good. You'll be great, but it's not going to do much. Milk is more, there's a bunch of de-stress peptides in milk. That's why Grandma used milk before she went to bed, because it relaxed you. So milk is a big inhibitor of zinc. Milk is a big inhibitor of dopamine levels. They show that people we study had a poor diet with excessive amounts of sugar and alcohol, which is also known to reduce zinc absorption. Stephen, a leading authority at California State Institute on the role of diet in criminal behavior, said Walsh's conclusions were plausible. He is more right than wrong. I don't know whatever that means. Everybody knows. All right, this is good. Now, I was doing some research, and I came across some information. I was looking on the brain. I just did a couple searches, and I thought this was real neat. There's two compounds up here. The mood stabilizing agents lithium and valproate robust increase the levels of the neuroprotective protein BCL2. You know, it doesn't have to mean a lot to you. All it has to mean is that protein that protects your brain was raised on lithium. Now, both treatments also increase the DNA binding of a certain activity to this and robustly increase the levels of BCL2 in the frontal cortex, your main highest center of your brain, lithium protected. This novel findings represents the first report of medication-induced increases in the central nervous system of BCL protein levels and may have implications not only for mood disorders, but also for long-term treatment of various neurodegenerative disorders. And I was thinking, I was like, wow, this is pretty neat. When I think, you know, when everybody thinks of lithium, they think of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. They think of manic people. They think of the straitjackets. You know, all the psychiatric stuff. I am not talking about any of that. That's fine if that's what you're using it for. But at a dose way lower than you would ever use that would cause toxicity in the body, you can protect your brain. And I'll show you how this works out. It says lithium, there's another study that I pulled out from the National Institute of Mental Health from Bethesda, Maryland. I mean, that's probably one of the better journals there. But long-term lithium treatment suppresses P53 and another, but increases BCL2. This is telling you that BCL2 is neuroprotective against excitotoxicity. Now, excitotoxicity, what happens is certain neurotransmitters bind to certain receptors in the brain and cause so much excitement that you actually kill a neuron or a brain cell. It's just like getting so excited and then all of a sudden just falling over. That's what's happening in the brain. For certain reasons, the brain was set up and is running that way. They found that the ratios changed for this protein level to help protect you in the brain by 5-fold after lithium treatment for 5 to 7 days. I mean, that's a huge change. it said the exposure of cerebellar granule, or the cerebellar, that's the part of the brain that has these types of cells. Glutamate induces a rapid increase. Those are bad. Actually, a P53, which is kind of interesting, is an oncogene for cancer. So there is a mind and body relationship to cancer based on what's going on in the brain, because the brain regulates everything. So they found that this protein levels with no apparent effect on BCL expression pre-treatment with lithium chloride for 7 days prevents glutamate-induced increases. So it actually said, hang on a second, you're exciting too much, we're going to calm you down. It actually dampened the excitability of the nerves and stopped them from committing suicide. These results strongly suggest that lithium-induced BCL2 upregulation, all that, our results further suggest that lithium, in addition to its use in treatment of bipolar depressive illness, may have an expanded use in the intervention of neurodegeneration. Now, we talked about aluminum and how aluminum could affect the certain parts of the brain. Now, lithium actually inhibits aluminum from being absorbed in your brain. It says that lithium inhibits aluminum-induced. Now, all apoptosis is programmed cell death. When you have aluminum in your brain and it's affecting the cells, your immune system is, hey, go kill that thing. We got to get it out of here. Okay, that's programmed cell death. But this shows that the damage produced by aluminum, or I believe other metals, lithium actually canceled those out. It actually protected and literally prevented the brain from being damaged. It said pre-treatment for 14 days with lithium carbonate in drinking water prevents aluminum-induced translocation of cytochrome C. Now what that means is DNA damage. That's what we're made of, DNA. So this stopped DNA damage from aluminum toxicity. And then it downregulates certain other enzymes that reduces DNA damage. Now, this was another study, which is kind of interesting. No matter what medication your medical doctor puts you on, lithium will protect you from the side effects or the toxicities of that medication that it produces. So it's shielding your brain from anything that's toxic. It said, we studied the neuroprotective actions of lithium against various insults in cultured cerebellar granule cells of rats. These rats, with all the research they've done on rats and animal cruelty, these probably were the happiest rats because they were actually protected. But these were put in a petri dish, so. But it says that the anticonvulsant phenetone carbamazepine has been shown to induce apoptosis of cerebellar, actually neuron death or brain cell death at high concentrations, what they're using at psychiatric wards. It says that lithium significantly protects against programmed cell death of brain tissue induced by aging of the cultures, even aging. Thus, lithium has robust. Anybody know what robust means? Strongly and vigorously healthy. That's the specific word that they used for that, saying, hey, this is pretty neat stuff. We got to do some more research on this. And there's even a drug coming over that hasn't even been approved by the FDA from Europe, does the exact same thing as lithium. But they're selling it over in the United States that has the same exact effect on the brain for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease and senile dementia and anything that's going to cause an excitatory. Your brain is excitatory in nature. Just look around. Look at how crazy it is. Everything's being accepted. It's nuts. There's no conformity. There's no suppression of the brain. I mean, that's why we have the law, right? It would be anarchy. So the brain needs to be suppressed and controlled. It's the same thing when you're talking about it on an emotional level. That's when the law comes in, and juries and prisons and court sentences. When you're talking on a chemical level, that's what lithium does. And I'm not talking about high doses. I'm not talking about toxicity. You got to take a very high dose if you were to have bipolar. I'm not talking about managing that. I mean, there's ways you can do that, but that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to ways to restore your brain and ways to protect your brain from the damage, because most of us have drinking alcohol. Most of us do caffeine. Most of us, these are accepted drugs that affect your brain. Most of us are, have smoked or have been exposed to secondhand smoke. Or we're on Prozac or Zoloft, or, that's just accepted. So this is a good way that doesn't step on anybody's toes, that will really protect people across the board. I think I had one more in here. Now, the only thing I didn't mention with actually lithium is when they did a study on lithium, they put 10 people on it, and they found that 8 people actually increased their gray matter of their brain by 3%. And that was in 4 weeks. So that is restoring your brain. The other, there was one that didn't have an effect, and then there's another one that was so small that it didn't make a difference. But 80% of those people did have a great effect. That's the L-Izyme Forte that we use in the office. A lot of times, as far as for toxicity levels, yeah, you're going to get a little lithium in water. You're going to get a little lithium in tomatoes and nightshades and different, mostly tomatoes. I'm trying to think of, I had them all written out. I got a little block, but they're the nightshade family. That's where most of the lithium is found. And it's kind of interesting because lithium in the nightshade family, what does the nightshade family sometimes cause? Arthritis. Lithium helps with gout, which is gouty arthritis. So there's some different things you can use. I like to use this with real cranky thyroids that are real fast. We'll slow these down because it might be more emotional, or get that thyroid going, or even if it has to do with an infection reflex process or some type of thing that's involving the thyroid, it just puts the brakes on it and helps the body adapt a little bit better. You can also use it for cluster headaches. It's got about an 85% success rate for that. So there's a bunch of different things. It's just such a great nutrient, and it's too bad that people think that, oh, you're on lithium or you're taking lithium. I mean, it's just that little social drawback that I think shouldn't draw anybody back now that they know what it does for them. So I usually recommend on these 3 in the morning and 3 mid-afternoon.
You said that's a very low dosage, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not going to create a toxicity. Plus, most people that come to these lectures take their essential fatty acids, take their vegetables, their fruit, do various things to protect them from that. I mean, if you're living on donuts and coffee and all that stuff, there might be an effect. But I mean, the dosage is so low and the results are so good just at that level. I mean, there's so much protection from doing that.
So is this acting kind of like a homeopathic remedy?
No, this is lithium. This is a mineral.
I know that, but since it comes from the nightshade plants, and yet it's used for treatment for gouty arthritis. That's why I'm thinking sometimes.
Yeah, you can use
the homeopathic, like a little bit of the stuff that's killing you.
Each tablet has 150 micrograms of lithium that's vegetable cultured. So if you're taking,
it's the same principle. It's just like.
No, it's not.
No, okay.
Yeah, you're going to use. I mean, you're going to use. it's as close to the standard dose like a medical would rate it as far as the significance. Like they usually use, you know, up to 10 grams of lithium carbonate. You know, we're talking about micrograms, and we're talking about 800 micrograms or 900 micrograms. So you need 100 times that to even equal what you use in a manic depressant. Okay, so it's not necessarily a homeopathic, and I know how that principle works, and that works very well, but under this situation, they're using microgram dosages. PDCM has a little bit in it, plant-derived colloidal minerals. Obviously, if you have minerals that, you know, your body absorbs good minerals as well as bad minerals. So it's good to have a good turnover of minerals these days. Everybody knows the situation with the soils, the vegetables, the fruits, the pesticides, the infection rates. It's tough to keep your nutrition level above where you need it. So this is why we supplement with the plant-derived colloidal minerals. It's probably it's the strongest concentration that you can get. I mean, you'll know when you taste it. I've tasted liquid toddy. I've tasted 4 or 5 different products. The concentration on this is like 2 or 3 times that of other products. And that's why it's in the price too. I don't know offhand. Sue, you know that, don't you? The PDCM?
Yeah, the 32 ounces is $55 and the 8 ounces is $20.
Oh. She does all the stockpiling and the pricing and everything. I'm glad she came. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about minerals and essential fatty acids. It was shown that infants given baby formula enhanced with DHEA or docosahexaenoic acid, which is a fat, and arachidonic acid exhibited significantly higher problem-solving ability only after 10 months when compared to infant formulas receiving common man-made formulas. A lot of stubborn people out there, and you know, a couple I could think of now that, you know, unless their pediatrician tells them that they need essential fatty acids, oh, everything in your formula is perfectly fine. Okay? Unless their pediatrician tells them, oh, it's okay, you can take flaxseed, or it's okay, you can take a little fish oil, they won't take anything. They're that strict with their medical doctor, like, whoa. Well, I was talking to somebody about that, and I said, listen, I said, you know, we're about, you know, as far as our nutrition, our science, and our intelligence, we're probably about 10, 12 years behind getting the real, you know, knowledge out to the public about nutrition and everything. I said, most of this is business-oriented nutrition and not natural nutrition. Okay? That's why, and I started to say that, I said, you know, they already started putting DHA in Canada, in the infant formulas. They're doing that right now. I think they started a year and a half or 2 years ago. They're putting it right in all the baby formulas now because it's proven. It's a scientific fact. So, you know, I told her that. She's like, well, I wasn't aware of that. So she's obviously not going to believe me, but if a country's doing it, maybe she'll believe them. But this was in the Lancet in 1998. Here's another enriched formula versus standard formula, and they showed that children given the nutrient-enriched formula had 14 points over those children on standard formula for intelligence. 14 points is a lot. That's enough to give you a couple of promotions in life. Here's some research I pulled out on Stevens. He showed that 53 children who were diagnosed with ADHD disorder had significantly lower concentrations of key fatty acids in the plasma lipids as well as the red blood cell total lipids. They were compared to 43 controlled children who were not diagnosed. And this is important because in the body, essential fatty acids, those synaptic receptors up in the brain are made up of about 40 to 50% fat. Good fat, DHA fat. So they found that if you have an essential fatty acid deficiency, the storage of the neurotransmitter the release of the neurotransmitter or the absorption of the neurotransmitter were all impaired, which is very important. So it's unfortunate that these days, when you hear of fat, you think of bad. Everybody thinks, I don't want to be fat. You know, your brain is fat, so you got a bad brain. Okay? So that's important, and they tested. Now, there's certain oils that are good. They tested certain oils that are good. Probably the best oils that show up in the research are the fish oils and the flaxseed oils. I like the flaxseed personally because of its absorption, because it comes from a plant base. You know, as I pointed out with the children, the low heads or the small heads and the and the jerkiness and twitchiness. You know, the fish oil is pretty tough. I mean, you know, it's tough to get a good product. There are some good products out there, and I've been researching some, but as far as I'm concerned, there's only one step that's needed a little bit beyond fish oil that flaxseed oil needs to be converted, and it's the same thing. Okay? And plus, you know, it's a little bit more protected too, because they actually squeeze the livers of the fish in different ways to extract that oil. What else did they find? Yeah, they found, as far as DHA levels, they found all the Alzheimer's disease patients were low in DHA, or essential fatty acids. And they compared safflower oil, which is more of a omega-6, which is it's not a good balance of omega-6 to omega-3s. Omega-3s are basically what your flax seed oil is. But they compared safflower oil to soybean oil, which is a far superior oil in DHA. And they found that rats fed the safflower oil diet exhibited less exploratory behavior and did not perform well in maze learning tasks. So there's definitely something to do with spatial learning. There's something to do with problem solving that has to do with fat, because that's what we're made out of. So these kids that are deficient in essential fatty acids, I forgot to tell you, the specific neurotransmitter that becomes disrupted is actually dopamine. So most of the kids that do have the attention deficit disorder or do have the ADH or attention deficit hyperactive disorder or cerebral allergy, or there's a bunch of different names, hyperkinetic kid, there's a bunch of different names, but basically that's saying is their dopamine levels and their norepinephrine levels are too low. Here's an article I pulled out on from Viatron. It was out of the Journal of American Medical Association, and they tested Japanese American males. All these numbers, all this. Basically, it said that the more coffee they drank, the more the better their risk against Parkinson's disease declined, which is good. But is it really that? It's probably not, because when they looked at the subject deeper, they found that mostly addictions such as coffee and cigarettes, like I mentioned, raise high levels of dopamine. And Parkinson's, what's Parkinson's? A dopamine deficiency. You get the pill rolling, the tremors, all that stuff. All right. Here's the Linum B6 that we use. It's kind of a, I wish they changed the name of that, but you need vitamin B6 to actually convert flaxseed oil to usable in the brain. And it's kind of interesting because B6 And lithium is what produces dopamine levels in the brain too. So there's a bunch of different angles you can go about with nourishing your brain. But this is basically an oil for kids. We usually recommend 2 twice a day. Adults, 2 twice a day, or even 3 twice a day if your hands are cracking, if you have cholesterol problems or diabetes, but various things. But we have most of that information on the wall at our office. You know, you're more than welcome to look. Here's the drugs. Amphetamines block dopamine and norepinephrine reuptake. So dopamine and norepinephrine stay in the synapses longer between where the neurons meet, and they don't allow them, so it stays there longer, so it's soaked in longer. So that's how that works. So instead of just raising it, they're stopping it from being absorbed to get it out of the system so they don't have a drop. Cocaine blocks dopamine and norepinephrine, so amphetamines work the same way as cocaine. And tricyclic antidepressants block reuptake channels for norepinephrine and serotonin. Everybody know what the tricyclic antidepressants are? Prozac, Zoloft. I wanted to mention something about that because, you know, if you are on any of those medications, you come in the office, obviously we're not going to use St. John's wort or any herbal supplement, but they did a study, can't find a study right now, but they did a study on the difference between St. John's and Prozac. Same. That's it. Exact same. They took all the research over time and they said that for mild to moderate depression, anxiety, changes in PMS, mood, at high levels for antiviral problems, that it was the same as Prozac. So when I think about that, I think, wow, there's a nutrient that's available right away, but yet Prozac was the quickest rushed drug in the history of medicine to the public. So, whoa, you know, so if you compare the two and you think, wow, the Prozac must be real good, superior to that St. John. No, it's the same thing. It works the same way in the body. So a lot of people are considering, do I want to be on medications? There wasn't side effects, basically, with the St. John's. The only side effect they known was for sensitivity to the sun. So, I mean, all this information, oh, don't take that herb or don't take this. They had a huge report in the consumer's report. I read it. We don't use any of that stuff in the thing. We don't even know. If we don't know it and it's not researched, and the company we get it from doesn't endorse it because they're just as liable as we are, we ain't using it. It's that simple. So that's why when somebody walks up to the counter and says, I want to pay 20 bucks for my ginkgo, or they go to GNC and they pay 12 bucks for their ginkgo, that's all paperwork, that's all liability, that's all shipping to protect everybody. And it says what's on the label is in the bottle. That's why you're paying the extra. Okay? So most people don't understand. They're like, well, what's wrong with my ginkgo? I don't know. Most of the time, the products they send to the companies to capsulize, they've done their assays. You're supposed to do your own assay if you're carrying the product. You can't go on just somebody else's word these days. It's unfortunate, but they found more mold, more mildew. I think the last lecture I had, I think 2 of the products out of 15 or something had what they said was on the label. And you can't get the MetaHerb product from Australia into America unless everything's on the label and it says what it's in there. It might have a little bit more, but it's better than a little bit less. I mean, it can't be that exact, but it's whatever's in there, it says it's in there. So when you take that to any lab in the United States, that's what's in there, that's what's in there. They'll all agree. That's why they got approval to bring it into the country. You can't do that. In America, they're skimping on the herbs. They're doing different stuff to the herbs. You're not getting the right species. You're not getting the right dosage. So here's the results of the studies on animals showing permanent loss of basically the animals, when they gave them the amphetamines, the cocaines, and the tricyclic antidepressants, the medications, their serotonin nerves were burnt out. You can't expect, it's taking something, there should be a balance there, but taking something exogenously and putting it in the body, and your body making it, you know, your body's going to say, hey, I don't need to make it anymore. That's what they're doing. That's why chemicals, your body can regulate something that's natural most of the time. But as far as chemicals, all these pathways and these neurons are being damaged. Yep. You have a tough time getting into the military if you're taking that stuff. Here's the nutrients for dopamine. Protein, which is tyrosine phenylalanine. Here's your iron, a little bit of copper, and then B3 and B6. Dopamine can only be made by this pathway that requires vitamins and minerals. This is not a theory, but a scientific fact. Here's some studies revealed that ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, in children release only half the amount of catecholamine hormones as normal children. It's norepinephrine from the adrenal glands. Okay? So their adrenals are very weak. Using PET scans, researchers found that this uncontrolled drop in blood sugar significantly decreased the brain's activity. So they're going through what? A hypoglycemic attack. Their brain's running out of energy. It was found that ADHD children unconsciously become physically hyperactive in an effort to force the adrenals to release more catecholamines. So, if you want to use something as a mild, we have a mild stimulant that I like to use, especially on kids that have ADHD, without making them racy or fast or palpitate or sweat or anything like that from the side effects, I like withania. It's got that little bit of licorice root in there. It's got a little bit of ashwagandha that helps balance the thyroid, because most of these kids have bad thyroids. And it's got a little bit of withania somnifera, which helps with sensitizing cortisol so that their catecholamines can come up a little bit. Real mild way, but it's probably my best pill for ADHD and blood sugar drops, especially around that mid-afternoon, when the liver and the adrenals are supposed to be talking to each other. That's when I use that. It's called withania. But that would be the best way to stimulate and push natural catecholamine levels in your body without causing side effects. Here's the low-functioning adrenal glands. Here's the withania I was talking about in the AM or the mid-afternoon. And then upon rising, there's nothing wrong with salt these days. Good golly, everybody's like, I got to stay away from salt. No, you don't have to stay away from salt. You're made out of salt. We're closest to sea salt you can get, literally the sea. That's what our blood's like. Put an eighth to a quarter teaspoon of Celtic sea salt in a glass of warm water and drink. If you're having trouble in the morning, you just feel like, God, I'm dragging, that will pick your adrenals up for you. Upon rising, large pinch of Celtic sea salt, and then you consume about an eighth to a quarter of a teaspoon. Now, when I played hockey, I used to, if you get a hip pointer or a cramp, a lot of times this happens when you're dehydrated. The best thing I used, because of conditioning camp and dry land, is, man, you got a hip pointer in there. You could not work that thing out. I used to do 2 tablespoons of salt water in a huge glass of water and drink that, and the next day my hip pointer was gone. That was a good tip that I learned very quickly that I didn't have to struggle through. Also, cramps helps with that too, or anything. Even cortisol is very important for allergies and the immune system. So if you think, God, my nose is always running in the morning when I get up, or I'm always sensitive because it's too humid out and I feel like the air's thick. I mean, do that to get your cortisol levels up so that you don't hyper-respond to allergies. Because most of the time, allergies, low adrenals are allergies and chronic infection. This was kind of interesting because everybody says that you actually need carbohydrates to live. I tell people, no, you don't. You can live off of fats and proteins the rest of your life. This was an interesting study done on 2 children that were put on a ketogenic diet because sugar or glucose feeds tumors, feeds tumor cells. There's actually, your tumor cells produce insulin receptors and they'll feed and they grow and they live off this. Well, ketones from a ketogenic diet or a protein and a medium chain fatty acid, the tumors hate that. So they put them in a ketogenic state. They hooked them up to a PET scan. They found that 21.8% average decrease in glucose uptake at the tumor sites in both subjects. One patient exhibited significant clinical improvement in mood. Everybody, the tumors were fine. Everybody's living. But their moods got better. Now you got to understand the brain lives off of 25% of your energy that you put in your mouth. It's that quick. Moves. So it's very easy for if you're eating a bad diet, for your energy and your nerves and all the nutrients to be pushed out of your system very quickly. So you're actually, with a malnourished, high caloric intake, you're actually setting your brain up for disaster because it needs 25%. Yeah, you could pick it up and turn it on, but that's like, you know, is great for carbohydrates, because when I think of carbohydrates, I think of laying in a plane and getting to that high altitude and you just pass out because there's not enough oxygen, and somebody puts an oxygen mask on you and you're back up. That quick. You're like, what happened? You know? Carbohydrates will pick you up a little bit, but it's the fats, the essential fats that carry you, and the proteins that carry you through the day. So I believe that this ketogenic diet and tumor metabolism is not only true for up in the brain, and it works very good for up in the brain because the brain has the highest circulation rate, but I believe it's going to be crucial in the future for other types of tumors in the body. So they continued the ketogenic diet for an additional 12 months, remaining free of disease progression. So their tumors done. Sure.
Does that apply also to lesions, or is that just with a tumor?
Lesions too. Yeah, I would say the same thing. Yeah. Not just because you have a tumor, that doesn't necessarily mean there's other non-tumor type cancers too that feed off of a real primitive energy system like glucose. So I believe if anybody, as far as MS or any other types of conditions as far as neurological, I think that would be great for them. I get on the net and I get on a ketogenic diet. Increasing learning and memory is a good brain tonic. This actually raises norepinephrine levels. It raises serotonin levels for kids to make them feel good. Helps them with their focus, concentration. It actually lowers cortisol levels so that kids aren't so anxiety. Sometimes, it's kind of like a note. You can play a bunch of notes different ways. It's the same thing with these neurotransmitters. So there's no real way of knowing, just unless you know the symptom, unless you know the condition, and what to use. I mean, there's so many different variations that if you don't study it and research, there's no way you're going to know. But it helps with ADD children, retaining, learning. It also helps with GABA. And GABA, it's known to raise GABA receptors, which is inhibitory. You'll learn the best when you're relaxed. Okay? There's a saying that says, be anxious for nothing. Anxiety will kill you. For nothing. I mean, when I read it, I was like, nothing? That's a lot. So that tells you your whole system is set up for anxiety, or to overreact, or to overrespond, or you can fill in the blanks. Here's the ginkgo that we like to use for meta herb that helps with circulation. It also helps with platelets, thinning out platelets, and it does a good job for short-term memory, intelligence, frequent headaches, trouble with balance, and then EEG analysis. So, I mean, there's so much research on it. It works so well. The only thing you gotta be is like anything, you gotta be patient. Ginkgo works over a 3 to 4 month period. So most of the research that's available is not going to happen, because what they do is they take 1 or 2 weeks for the acute stage, and then they take 3 or 4 weeks for the chronic stage, and they try to speed it up, and there's more variables involved in that, and they say, oh, it didn't do anything. Well, ginkgo works the best over a long period, over 3 to 4 months. St. John's wort that I was talking about helps with, that's your natural Prozac. You know, your best natural Prozac is exercise. It's that simple. That's your best natural exercises, exercise, yeah, that's it. There's an IMT on there, which is pretty important because how they design that is pretty neat. This inositol has been known to help with people that have obsessive compulsive disorder. There's a bunch of different pathways that happen in the brain that are very inositol or honey sugar dependent. That's what inositol is. So that helps with obsessive compulsive, and then people that have obsessive compulsive obviously will get burned out quicker, so they'll have more anxiety. So they put Mintran. The best way to cool off a sympathetic or go nervous system is with calcium, potassium, and iodine. Those are the best coolants you can use in your body. That's what MT is, Mintran. So you got St. John's for the serotonin, the norepinephrine. You got the IMT, especially for obsessive compulsive, and then you got the relaxing. So that's a good balanced pill. You know, some people like to use a St. John's. I like this combination the best because somebody's brain was working when they put that together. Here's for low blood sugar. Obviously, I don't think we get enough proteins these days. Proteins are very competitive depending on when you eat them. I think your best time to eat your proteins are between 10 and 2 in the afternoon. That's when your pancreas is the most active. And a lot of times if you wake up in the middle of the night or your blood sugar drops and you're waking up for various reasons, the protein really helps. Because like I said, phenylalanine, tyrosine, tryptophan, those are all amino acids that support your neurotransmitters. So if you're not getting your protein, you're not going to be relaxed. Okay, I put some points to help mental stability. Obviously, structure life because neurotransmitters have structured release periods. Eat regularly. Don't skip breakfast. Graze. Eat every 2 hours. Endorphins must be renewed every 10 minutes. Be realistic about your goals. You know, not be an overachiever. That's called anxiety. Trying to get somewhere where you want to be quicker and faster. That's anxiety. Reduce excess bad fat, not excess weight, which is good. Anything that's probably, you know, your cookies, candies, cakes, pastries, pastas, all that stuff, or, you know, you're dealing with the Crisco's and, you know, Fabio and Parquet and all those commercials. Laughter, even smiling, produces endorphins. So even when it's hard to laugh sometimes. Positive attitude is proven to produce endorphins. Play your favorite music to raise endorphins. Do aerobic exercise. That increases your serotonin, your natural Prozac, and your endorphins. And then your sleep-wake periods. You gotta, I learned that real quick in hockey. You gotta, if you get to bed 1 hour after 11 o'clock, you gotta make up another hour that next day. I mean, you're that dragging. So, tucking yourself in an hour earlier, if you did that, you probably wouldn't have time to do anything the way I wrote it there. Right? Just waiting for someone to pick that up. But if you get to bed at 10, probably 9 would probably be the best. Just cut it back an hour. If it's 12, you probably want to cut it back 2 hours at 10. And then use proper nutrients, amino acids, vitamins, minerals, and herbs for mental health. Okay, do I have any questions?
When you talked
Yep.
about,
Is an eggplant in the nightshade family?
Yes. Yep. They call that the Silencia family. So it's eggplants, all the different colored peppers, tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant. So those are mostly, and it's kind of interesting because how they name that, the nightshades. And then you think about night, and you think about most of the crimes that happen are at night. Thinking, wow, there's lithium in the nightshades. So,
when you talked about fruit sugar early on, are you talking about even the sugar that when you're eating the fresh fruits?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Not everybody's going to have a genetic fructose problem, but there's a lot of fructose intolerances. So, drinking a soda has high fructose corn syrup, anything that has corn in it, all the sweeteners, everything, the baby foods, there's a whole list of these, but I believe that has more of a relationship on LDLs than anything else. So instead of yelling at the fruit industry or saying, hey, you're doing this wrong, or you shouldn't eat so many fruits a day because there's antioxidants and you can't go back on what you said, we're going to bring out a drug and lower your LDLs. So that diabetes and insulin resistance right here has a direct relationship on excess fructose. Now, look at this one on LDLs, oral contraceptives. How many females are on oral contraceptives? And you walk into your medical doctor and he does your LDLs, and he just talked to his rep about an hour ago, and he gave you the trip, the tickets to where you're going, and he's got to get so much sold. But they want you at 70 now. So if you're not at 70 and you're on, well, I'm taking birth control, doc. Now you're possibly on one drug. Now you're going to change your serotonin, so you're going to have to be on another drug. Now you're going to have gallbladder dysfunction, so you're not going to be able to eat any fats at all because they're going to cut your gallbladder out. Now the oral contraceptive is probably messing with your thyroid. That's going to slow down your metabolism. I mean, you can really get yourself in a rut when you start looking at these things. They divide it up and make it sound so sweet, but it's not that way in real life. So insulin resistance is probably the biggest one because that's up almost 200%. And I think it has more to do with fructose consumption than anything. Your corns, all your fruits, there's fructose in vegetables, but low level. So I think if you're interested, vegetables and meats. Vegetables and meats. You can have your 1 or 2 pieces of fruit a week or as a snack. But, to get your cholesterol down to 70, oh, good golly. That's going to be tough. Any other questions? Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Instead of meat, what could you substitute for, vegetables? And
Why would you want to substitute?
For those who are vegetarian.
Why are you vegetarian?
There are a lot of people on.
It's just moderation in all things. Chicken, turkey, fish, your nuts, your seeds, all those things. You can get just as much, like, you know, you try to, respect everybody's opinion, and I understand that, but, when it comes down to it, the body is very smart. It can really, I don't think we all necessarily need to be, I think it's good for some people, definitely, because some people can metabolize their vegetables. Others can't handle their meats. So I can understand that, but as far as philosophy is concerned, it doesn't jive with me, as far as philosophically. If we're talking genetics, and we're talking numbers, and we're talking predispositions and what runs in your family, that's fine. But as far as philosophy, it just doesn't hold water with me. Because our body is basically herbivore, carnivorous. I mean, we're made to balance both of them. So I try to stay out of those philosophical, and I respect people's opinions. I don't mind that at all. That's perfectly normal. If you want to eat all meats, that's fine. If you want to eat all vegetables, but I try to just do a general situation. But for instance, for you, probably if you had a brain situation, I would probably, if I wanted to raise my tyrosine for my kids, I would probably feed them sesame seeds, and I would probably feed them cashews. It has the highest tyrosine rate. So I'm glad you asked that question because I forgot about it. So nuts are really big on the specific, yes.
I do a lot of talk comments about cholesterol today. I had a blood test done, and the doctor told me that I had high cholesterol, but I had bad cholesterol, which is that I also had high good cholesterol. And as long as they were the same, then when they refer to high cholesterol, does that mean any cholesterol, or are they talking about just?
Well, he's referring to your total. He's referring to your total.
Okay.
So your total is your HDL plus your LDLs. And your LDLs are supposedly the bad ones that they want to get down to 70. What were yours?
You just said it was high.
Yeah, so it's probably maybe 130, 140 or something.
Yeah, my good cholesterol was high also, so it wasn't.
Right. So that's what you got to look at, and that's what you got to base this stuff on, is relative to the situation you're in. So if you have low triglycerides, high LDLs, and your HDLs are high, and you have good insulin, and all your CBCs, your complete blood count looks good, keep on walking. Don't stop to pick up your prescription. That's what no, keep on feeling good. So, yes?
You mentioned creativity in the literature. Is there any particular supplements that would help creativity, or do they all throw into that?
That's interesting. You know what? I didn't find a lot of, basically nutrition's involved with everything, specifically. But the best I found on creativity was music. Music actually pushes the highest creativity centers in the brain. Do we have any, did anybody fill out a sheet or anything for testing? All right. Okay, fatigue low back. Delia, Grace, Micton? Delia? Am I pronouncing that right?
She just left.
Okay, there she's done. And then, okay, here's Beth. Peevler? Come on up here, Beth. Watch the cord here. Grab the side. Was on antidepressant, okay, for just weaned off 2 to 4 weeks. How are you, Dr. Krygier? Come on up this way. All right, she was just weaned off 2 to 4 hours, 2 hours of sleep per night, muscle cramps. All right, was on antidepressant. Which one were you on? Okay. Lorenzo. And you got to understand when you're on antidepressants or any other medication, you got to change that just about every 6 weeks. The brain changes. It's changing every day. But as far as to the dosage, your brain's smart. It can outthink a lot of times your doctor's medication dosage. So 6 weeks is usually when everybody's happy, you got over your problem. After that, you're under that doctor's responsibility for that medication and the liability. So the government will see that and they'll say, hey, 6 weeks, we'll give you 6 weeks on this, and you should be transformed. That's what the government says. Okay? But the doctor's responsibility is taken on from that point on and holds the liability or any problems that go on with that medication. So she was on antidepressant. All right, now let's test her. Let's show us. I don't know what I'm going to do with you. We're going to test you well. Put this in your hand. Hold your arm out as tight as you can. Would it be better if I turn the computer off? Turn this off. Yeah, save them. Turn that off too. Okay. All right.
Can you just flip the top down on the computer?
Put the cap on it. Now hold tight. Turn this way. Sorry about that. Hold as strong as you can. Hold your arm out tight. I'm going to push down. You hold tight. Good. Now put this. Now as you can see, she's kind of skinny mini. Okay? She's skinny. She's slender. She's got long fingers. Hold as tight as you can. Good. So she's pretty testable. Now, what's your... Now, there's no specific text to say, oh, you got depression. Or, you know, it's not that specific, but put your arm out like that, put your hands out and hold tight. Now, let's go through the reflexes. Salt, brain, here's your brain. See how weak your brain is? it's working, but reflex-wise, she's short-circuiting on that brain because electrically it's not right. Okay? So we'll test that brain, okay? We'll go hold tight, positive, negative. Whenever you test for a negative brain, it means the brain's been in chronic struggle or, you know, trouble. Get relaxed. So that's the first thing we're going to do on her. Now we're going to find out, chronic means probably that she's been pushing herself too much. Acute probably means that she's going through the depressive swing, but that's not always the case. Let me see the Intran on that. So you put that nutrition right over that. She doesn't want that. So that's a no. So she doesn't want to be, right now, she doesn't want to be relaxed for that with that Mintran. Let me see the Cataplex B on there. We're going to find her. I don't know if she's a B or a G yet. Let me see that G. Hold tight. No. Let me see that G. Anybody in your family have this? No. As far as nerves or anything? Is your job bothering you? And stress. There's her G's. So she's a G. She's on that right side of that picture. Apprehensive, moody. Good. 2. So I'm going to test her right over that. The Cataplex G. How do you do as far as your blood pressure?
Good.
Good. Yep, you know, so she's a 6 on that Cataplex G. That will relax her brain. Now hold this. She's a 6 on that. Now you got to take your B's together. That's only the G part of your B's. Where's the Cataplex B again? Do you sleep good at night now?
No.
No, you're not sleeping at all?
No.
She don't want the B's. Do we have any of that St. John's in here? How about that Wickham? No, I didn't. There's her zinc. Let me see that Gamma. positive, negative thyroid's going to get off too. Let me see that organic minerals. She doesn't want that Mintran, but I think what's going on with her, have you ever had your thyroid tested? Hold this. Good. Now, I'm getting her for the G's to relax her nervous system. I think that G's work the same way in diabetics for lowering sugar levels as when you take apple cider vinegar. When you're a diabetic, it lowers your sugar after you eat it. It has to do with the acetylcholine. That's the main speed center in your brain. For her, she needs the organic minerals. I'm going to go through her thyroid to slow her mind, slow her heart, and slow her, nervous system down. So that's the organic minerals. She doesn't need any brain part of that. I think I can do her brain through her thyroid. You race at night at all? Yeah. Palpitate, sweat. Nothing like that. Your heart doesn't bounce or sputter. Good. So I'd put her on a G's, probably at 3 twice a day. Hold strong. There's your breaking point. 2, 4, 6. She's an 8. So I put her on 3 organic minerals in the morning to relax her in the morning. I put her at 3 in the mid-afternoon. I'd put her on 3 before she goes to bed. Her monitor's an 8. And I'd do 3 times a day. That's how I'd play that. I'd play that for about 2 weeks, and I'd be doing 3 twice a day on that Cataplex G. I'd obviously watch her coffee, teas, colas, and chocolates. That's a good idea, right? You do any of that stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, your coffee, teas, colas. I know. Coffee, teas, colas, and chocolates are tough. And how are you as far as your around your period and stuff? Does that bother you more? It's bad around your period? So she's probably definitely got a hormonal factor. I like using that Progon B, especially that it's a natural progesterone, and it's supposed to raise a specific chemical in the brain to help sedate females that have a lot of anxiety or irritability or anger or listlessness, all that around their cycle. You put it 2 weeks before menstruation, which helps. Okay? So that would probably be, for her, I wouldn't do that right now, but I'd try her on the organic minerals at 3, 3, and 3, and then the Cataplex G at 3 twice a day for your nervous system. And that's how I would play you. Now remember, the patience thing up there. It takes about, I would say, 2 to 3 months for these deficiencies because they are so low. So don't get discouraged. There's a bunch of different things you can do with you, but that's where I would start right there. Okay? Thank you for coming up.
Thank you.
Yes.
Doctor,
Yes,
if
question?
somebody does not have a period, how would you monitor the Progon B?
I wouldn't use the Progon B.
Oh, you wouldn't? Okay.
No.
Well, the reason I ask is because they have me on a progesterone supplement.
Who?
My DO. And so she has my progesterone, a DHEA, and a thyroid. And then I take the different stuff.
Yeah, we handle things a little bit different than the medical profession.
And she's open to
I
different.
would rather use the Ovex for amenorrhea, which they call not having a period,
Mhm.
to help
yeah,
support
that's-
ovarian function, that I would just throwing in progesterone, because I think there's certain factors that it's in the Ovex that help support a period that we don't know about yet, but still has, I think will have a greater effect
Okay,
than just throwing in progesterone.
okay, and I know I still have all my parts, so.
Yeah, well, you definitely need those to have on the
Doctor,
period.
question? Doctor,
I know, I just like, what am I?
Yes,
can all these things you're having this person take, is that acceptable if they're already on a drug?
yep. I'm not giving her any herbs. She can take the lithium with it. She can do a bunch of different things, but it will not affect her
So
medication.
they cannot have herbs if they're on a drug from a psychiatrist?
Exactly. It depends on which one it
Or
is.
the antidepressants?
Right. Well, you can't be on St. John's wort.
Cannot?
No, you can't be on any tricyclic antidepressants if you're on those. You can't take St. John's with that. Because it would be doing the same thing, and you would have a rebound from it.
So like eating primrose oil, is that?
That's fine. Yeah, that's more your omega-6 essential fatty acids.
Somebody said their psychiatrist would absolutely know if they're on that Paxil or absolutely no anything criminal soil. So that's an herb, isn't it?
Yeah, that sounds like more of the Pfeiffer Research Institute, which has a lot of good research, and you know, I think from what I read, they had some great stuff going on over there. So I have to take their word for it. They work more with that, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't work with very severe conditions. I work with mild to moderate conditions. I don't really work with people that hear voices or different things like that. I think there's a place for medicine, and it's not in our office unless there's some, you know, situations that I've talked with the patient or they're willing to work with me with it. Okay, so somebody just walk off the street, they're not, and they're having these problems, they're not going under my care. Okay, unless, you know, we work with somebody, and, you know, or we can get some additional help. So I've had that happen a couple times, and, you know, the situation was, you know, it was just too much, too extreme, and I'm sure I could have helped them, but their compliance probably wouldn't have been that great because they didn't understand what I was doing, and they haven't been to a lecture or don't know what's going on. Okay? Any more questions? My next lecture, Fighting Fatigue, that will be September 1st, and I talked a little bit about that. Make sure you grab a flyer on that. That's about, you know, 70% of what I see in the office, so there's a lot of good information out there, and I think everybody would benefit from that lecture. Thanks for coming tonight.